January 3rd, 2025, folks, and the Habs drop a 4-2 decision to the worst team in the National Hockey League. Let's get to it. Let's discuss it right now. I don't know how disgusted you were with this hockey game. I know I was, but apparently the pundits online, and whether you're watching L'Antichambre or listening to anything else, the Canadiens played a great game. I am so tired of people coming out there and saying they played so well. If they played well, they would have continued to score 4 or 5 goals per game. They did not play well tonight. And it started pre-game, lining out because of a cold. David Savard out undisclosed. We don't know why he wasn't in the lineup tonight. But at the end of the day, you're missing 2 of your best players. In comes Michael Pezzetta, who hasn't played since October 26th, and Jaden Struble, who hasn't played since December 12th. So both guys not in the lineup recently. Both guys not very fluid, not familiar with the way the team's playing. Let me put Pezzetta on the second line. Okay, hold on. You put Michael Pezzetta on the second line with Kirby Dach and Alex Newhook because he didn't want to disturb the other lines? Because it's going to be such a stretch to take a guy like Yoel Armia, who plays a similar style of game to Patrick Laine. He's not Patrick Laine, don't get me wrong, but he's a big body, a guy who can control the puck, get separation, create plays with his body, and you're going to leave Michael Pezzetta there on the second line. The fact that it was just him that was out there with Newhook and Dach pretty much laid the groundwork for the fact that the BlackHawks didn't give a rat's ass what that line was going to do because they weren't very dangerous all night long. That goes without saying. But you look at the way this hockey game starts. Let's get away from that now because what's done is done. Struble's in. And to talk about Struble, early in the hockey game, he takes a tripping penalty. Sorry, he took the slashing penalty. I'm just as confused as the ref on that play. But he takes a slashing penalty, and then Arbor Xhekaj on the same play takes a trip. So both defensemen off the ice for 2 minutes. It's a 5-on-3. And lo and behold, what happens? The Blackhawks control the puck. They collapse the inverted triangle down. They go cross crease because they know it's Sam Montembeault's weakness, and Tyler Bertuzzi scores to make it 1-0. Oh, look at that. The Blackhawks have a lead against the Canadiens, and they're the worst team in the league. Now, granted, the Canadiens got a late power play, didn't do much with it, and then Cole Caulfield scored at the end of the period, or close to the end of the period, I should say, his 20th of the season to make it 1-1. So let's just scratch it all out. The Canadiens come out of that period relatively unscathed. Move on to the second period. The second goal is a direct result of Struble and the way he plays the game because he's not used to it, right? He's not out there all the time. His timing's off, whatever the case may be. In effect, what he did was he carried the puck into the zone. Remember I said that. Carried it into the zone, had Caulfield disengage, gives Caulfield the puck, and as Caulfield turns around to dish it back to him when he's got pressure, which is what you're supposed to do as opposed to just giving it up, Struble had taken off to go to the bench. So, bing bang, turnover. Puck comes back the other way. The play goes into the Canadian zone. Struble on the right side completely lost because he was thinking about going to the bench but couldn't get there. What happens? Nick Foligno puts himself in the slot. Get a point shot. Deflection by Foligno. Guess what? 2-1 Blackhawks. So that's the second instance where Struble is the main reason why the Canadiens are behind the 8 ball. The Canadiens don't manage to score. They get an early power play in the third. They still don't manage to score. And guess who? Pat Maroon, who got into a fight with Arbor Xhekaj early in the first period. Got his ass kicked, by the way. I think Arbor gave him like 6 lefts to the head before he dropped and said, screw it, I can't take any more of these. Okay, Maroon makes it 3-1. Another instance where he's in tight, deflected cross crease into the net. But Montembeault's never going to learn to use his stick in tight, and he's never going to learn to deflect the pucks. It is what it is, I guess, right? Maybe Eric Raymond can answer that question for me. Mr. Goaltending Coach? But I digress. The Canadiens managed to get it to 3-2 on a power play goal by Emil Heineman, who bunted a puck in after it came off the glass and literally bunt to make sure it was below the crossbar to make it 3-2. Now, there was some argument as to whether or not it was offside Kirby Dach had his foot up in the air, but we all know that rule doesn't apply anymore. So it's 3-2. Then what happens? As the Canadiens are starting to build momentum and are starting to get good scoring chances and are stopped a couple of times by Soderblom, back come the BlackHawks the other way. Oh, the hockey gods are listening. The hockey gods are watching the hockey game. Shot off Vlasic's stick, goes off the crossbar, and then lands on the stick of Nick Foligno as the Canadiens' defense are running around like a bunch of cockroaches trying to cover whatever they can because they don't know what the hell's going on. Neither does Montembeault. And Foligno puts in a second of the night, 4-2. That's how the game ends. If I sound frustrated, I am, because I was planning to come out here and put up the Four Horsemen sign to say 4 in a row for the Canadiens, and they're playing tomorrow against the Colorado Avalanche. Now, there are a couple of things that I don't understand, and I outline one of them, and that's the fact that Marty St. Louis decided to go with Pezzetta on the second line. I don't understand that. Granted, Struble, you didn't have much of a choice. He's your seventh defenseman. You don't have anybody else. Okay, Struble in the lineup, Savard out. Again, we don't know what happened to Savard, but people believe that he's got a lingering injury, so there's that. And then there's Patrick Laine, who got a bit of a flu. So what happens? They keep him out of the lineup. They put in Pezzetta, and they put Pezzetta on the second line. Not even the third line. The second line. Okay? Pezzetta normally plays on the fourth line. So if he would have gone out there and played with Jake Evans, and he would have gone out there and played with Emil Heineman, I think the Canadiens would have been okay. I think, he would have gotten limited minutes, which is what happens with the fourth line, and everything would have been fine. And instead, what you could have done is you could have taken Yoel Armia, bumped him up to the second line. You could have taken somebody, I don't know, like Jake Evans, and put him on the third, drop Dvorak to the fourth, so this way you balance the lines out a little bit. But again, I think Marty St. Louis decided, you know what? I don't want to mess too much with these lines. The guys are playing well, and, I'm going to leave it like this. So basically, he's going to have egg on his face because he made a lousy decision as far as Michael Pezzetta is concerned, who hasn't played since the beginning of the season, basically on October 26th. Marty, I love you. It was the wrong play. Period. There's no two ways about it. I know it was a last-minute decision. It was a last-minute thing that happened, but last-minute things, coaches know how to adapt. And putting Michael Pezzetta on your second line definitely is not the way to adapt, especially when, and this is critical, I spotted it, the Canadian staff must have spotted it, but what the Blackhawks were doing is they were lining up Dickinson, Hall, and Foligno to play against the Suzuki line. And now the only other guy who matches that Chicago line in size is Slafkovsky. But by and large, Caulfield and Suzuki, they can't compare, especially not against Dickinson, who's a bloody tree on the ice. So, I don't know. Again, you've got Pezzetta on the second line. Your first line is pretty much covered 5-on-5. What do you do? It's maddening, right? Because there are answers to these questions. Okay? Even if you don't want to put somebody like Armia on the second line, right? You don't want to put him there. Okay. Maybe you can put a Brendan Gallagher, who's had experience on the second line previously in his career and has been playing some pretty good hockey. Maybe you throw a bone to a guy like, I don't know, Emil Heineman, who's among the rookie leaders in scoring. No. Michael Pezzetta on the second line. Jesus Christ. I guess that's all I could say about that. There were coaching decisions to be made. They weren't made. The Canadiens looked flat coming out of the gate. I'm pretty sure they were pissed off at the way things were as far as the lineup was concerned, because they didn't come out with much energy to start the hockey game either. But Marty St. Louis said he was happy with the way they played. Didn't throw anybody under the bus. Why? Because it was a coaching staff that needed to be thrown under the bus today. Normally, I am all for the coaches. I am all for defending the coaches. Not tonight. Tonight, Marty, you, Berehowski, and Robida shit the bed. Period. After seeing the way Struble started the game, after seeing the way he struggled, always having the puck in his skates, I'd have played 5 defensemen. Period. But no. We're going to keep rolling 6. We're going to keep putting Struble out there, and we're going to keep putting our team up behind the 8 ball. We're going to keep throwing Pizzetta out there on the second line. Holy hell, man. Do you not learn from your mistakes? You have recently, and credit to you. The team's been playing very well, but this was critical. This game would have put you within a point. Again, a point of the wild card spot, which is held right now by the Ottawa Senators. You literally pissed away a game in hand against the worst team in the NHL. Why? Because you were missing a couple players. And you pissed away a start by Sam Montembeault, who will not start tomorrow night unless you're absolutely nuts. And so now you're going to put Jacob Dobesch in against the Colorado Avalanche. That's a tall ask for a kid who's only played one game in the National Hockey League. So a lot of decisions were made in this hockey game that may affect this team for the next couple of days. Habs are back on Monday playing against Vancouver. So they've got the game tonight. They got the game tomorrow against the Avalanche. And then they fly home from Colorado to Montreal to take on the Chicago BlackHawks. And we know how returns are after long trips. Granted, the Vancouver Canucks, I said Chicago Blackhawks, the Vancouver Canucks on Monday, excuse me. The Canucks are not playing very good hockey right now, and there's all kinds of different rumors about Elias Peterson being traded and JT Miller possibly going to the Rangers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, if the Rangers trade Miller for Mika Zibanejad, one, I think Chris Drury is a bloody idiot. Because we know that JT Miller is a very egotistical type of player. Mika Zibanejad is the heart and soul right now of the Rangers. They already got themselves in trouble with the Jacob Trouba trade. Can you imagine what that team's going to respond like if they trade away Mika Zibanejad? All the good work that Gordon and Hughes, not Hughes, but Jeff Gordon did with the Rangers to rebuild that team, basically Chris Drury's going to have pissed it out the window. Mika Zibanejad was a big part of that rebuild. Okay, he was a young player they picked up from Ottawa, a huge part of that rebuild, and he wants to be there. But no, Drury's thinking about trading him to Vancouver. I mean, anyway, let's put that aside. Tomorrow night, big show. You know, we're going to have the big 1-hour show here on Montreal Hockey Talk. So I'm going to have a lot of things to talk about. Making decisions as far as, injured players, that's going to be one of the things that I'm definitely going to bring up. Goaltending, once again, is another thing that I'm going to bring up, and I'm going to bring up the rebuild. I had a very interesting discussion today with one of the guys on I think it was BlueSky we did it on, and I apologize because he's out there as Recliner Sports. I don't know what his real name is, so my bad. But it was a very heated discussion, not so much vitriol or anything like that, but in the sense that we were discussing what the rebuild was all about, what being in the mix was all about, because I asked that question yesterday. And his thought process was being in the mix was it meant nothing until the month of April, but you don't get in the mix in the month of April unless you're in the mix earlier in the season. So I pointed out 3 points of the season that are very important. Those are things, again, that I'm going to bring up in tomorrow's show. And you can decide whether or not you agree with me or not. Like, I'm not forcing anything down anybody's throat. It's an opinion from me. But, everybody talks about certain points in the season that are extremely important. So I'm going to bring those points up, and I'm going to bring up the changes that were made, because there have been changes. The way the Canadiens play, number 1. The players in the lineup, number 2. And so I'll let you decide what you think, because the Recliner and I went at it for pretty much, I would say, a couple of hours. And again, when I say at it, heated discussion. No vitriol whatsoever. So we talked about it. We threw our points out there. We reciprocated. It was a great discussion. And, there were some of the things that came out that, they were mentioned in the media. I'm not the media. I could give a rat's ass what certain people say. There are some, which I mentioned in this conversation with Recliner Sports, that I find reputable and have a different thought process when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens and the game of hockey in general. And then there are those conventionalists who like to be parrots and repeat everything that everybody else says. I'm not one of those guys. I like to think for myself. I like to make sure that everything's okay. So it is what it is, right? I am so tired of, the whole Um, the whole concept of it is what it is, right? I'm not even going to bring it up anymore. I just, the media is the media. I'm not going to bash anybody. I'm not going to compare anybody, but I am going to say this. If you're looking for quality media coverage when it comes to the Canadiens, and I'm not talking about blogs. I'm not talking about Habs Eyes on the Prize or Montreal Hockey Now. Those guys do fantastic work. Mark Simon, Jared Book, and the team over at Habs Eyes on the Prize, they do good work. I also follow GoHabs.com, HabsWorld.net. So there are a bunch of different blogs that, and you'll see it if you follow our Facebook page, you'll see it, right? I have all of them there, and all their new articles, I feed them out so that you guys can catch them. And you can comment, or you can go to their site and comment, whatever you prefer. But I try to centralize things because I'm not the writing type anymore. I used to write. I don't have the time for it anymore. But at the end of the day, those guys do a great job. But there are two guys in the media that I trust as far as their opinions are concerned, because they're not regurgitated. They're fresh. They're real. They're based on fact. And, I trust them, and I think they're great columnists. One more thing I'm going to bring up, which I found very interesting today, and I may go a little bit more in depth tomorrow. I just wanted to throw this out there. Yesterday, you heard me talk about the loss in the World Hockey Junior Championships and, Dave Cameron not having practices. Another thing that came out today that Cameron said, which really irked me as a coach, is that their advanced stats, or analytics as it were, indicated that Team Canada was doing enough to win. Dave, one very important stat that you need to think about when you're talking about winning hockey games is scoring fucking goals. You couldn't do it. So don't tell me your analytics indicated you can win hockey games. You couldn't do it because you couldn't put the puck in the net. One more thing I'm going to bring up as well. Okay? And this goes for everybody who's out there. I don't care. Young, old, new to the internet, new to Twitter or whatever. What some people are doing out there to Cowan, Easton Cowan, okay, is deplorable. Everybody is bullying this kid on his Instagram account because he didn't pass the puck to Bonk in the third period. I'm going to remind you guys that these are 18, 19, and 20-year-old kids that are out there on the ice. In McKenna's case, he's 17. And you're blasting this kid, blaming him for Team Canada's shortcomings. Stop. You want to blame Team Canada's shortcomings on somebody? You blame it on the scouting staff. You blame it on the manager who put the team together. You blame it on the coach who sat there stroking himself instead of teaching these kids to adapt to a game that they were playing, to a tournament where there are different teams, different styles of play, and different ways to respond. Okay? Instead, what did you get? Oh, you got tough with a 20-year-old kid on Instagram? I sent this invitation out there. I'm an IT guy by trade. You continue doing that shit, okay, to a young man like that who you're probably going to turn away from the game of hockey completely, despite all the time that this kid has invested, that his parents have invested. You're blasting him because he didn't make a pass in a hockey game that Team Canada was trailing in. Team Canada was trailing in that hockey game not because of Cowan, not because of Bonk, not because of McKenna, not because of George in goal. It was because of the coaching staff sitting on their hands and having morning skates instead of real practices. Real coaches, after games and between games, sit down, analyze video, and put together game plans to move into the next game. You watch what certain teams have done. You watch the way Czechia played. You don't think of your own analytics because they mean nothing against Czechia because you haven't played them yet. Right? Every tournament is different. Oh, last year, Czechia beat you in the quarterfinals, you jackass. And they did it again this year. Why? Because you were unprepared. It's not on the players, man. It's on the coaches. Like I say, I defend coaches, but when you sit on your hands and do nothing, you're not a coach. You're a lazy prick. Dave Cameron should never, ever, ever be considered to coach Team Canada again. Because he didn't coach it this year, I can guarantee you that. I'll see you tomorrow night after the Colorado game. Man, am I hot.